Ancient technologies. How the ancient humans would have used electricity. One of the problems is we always get in modern day times that I see a lot of people, when you mention the idea of ancient humans using electricity, they immediately try to compare it to modern day times. And then they try to complain that, or argue that, no, because then we will find cell phones, satellites, blah, 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 and all this stuff. It's like, no, we would not find in ancient times the same shit we have now. We will find similar stuff, yes, but not the same stuff. It'll be different because they will use it differently, right? And that's the thing. It took a long time for us to get to a point where we're at, where we can have satellites and smartphones and TikTok, right? And all the stuff that we currently have, right? But in the past, they wouldn't use it to create stuff like TikTok, satellites. It wouldn't be necessary because none of that stuff is for survival. That's all just entertainment based. So ancient humans would have used electricity for something of importance. So they would have used it for a different purpose. So I'm going to show you a couple of things they would use it for. So obviously, where they would have got the idea for electricity? Well, lightning. Yeah, a lot of ancient stories and stuff like that talk about gods, and one of them is Zeus. For those who know, right, the god of lightning. So lightning. So lightning is where they would have got the idea of electricity. Then they would have been trying to figure out what is it, right? And then they will eventually figure out how they can create it. They will eventually figure out static electricity, and that's where they'll be like, oh, electricity is everywhere. So let's start looking for it. Look to figure out how we can get electricity, like right, how we can harness it because it's everywhere. And that's where something like the Baghdad battery would come in. Now, it wouldn't be to use it to create a whole bunch of, technology based off of it. It would just be used for whatever a small amount of usefulness it comes in. Like you can use a lemon with iron or zinc piece of metal and a copper piece of metal, right? And you can use the lemon to create electricity. Not a lot of electricity unless you use a lot of lemons, but nonetheless, you can literally go on YouTube or TikTok and type up lemon batteries, and you'll see a whole bunch of videos about making batteries out of lemons and charging things with it, right? So, what they would use electricity for if they did have it? Well, electrochemistry will be one of those things. The ability to use it when chemicals are mixed, and it's like, okay, this mixture is very toxic. I want to point out that ancient humans knew chemistry. Ancient humans called it alchemy at some point, and way before that, it was magic, right? Or whatever other term they had in ancient times. Remember, ancient times is not just people who speak English, right? Ancient times is a whole variety of people with different languages. So the ancient times for Chinese people would be different than the ancient times for Egyptians and for Russians and for Hispanics, right? And the list goes on. So they will have different words, but they will be describing the same thing, right? So for them, electricity would be magic or uh, the power of a divine god, whatever. Same thing, right? It's the same thing. For us, we just call it electricity. For them, it's Zeus, right? So they would need to uh, separate chemicals or create a chemical reaction. Like they're trying to get two chemicals that normally don't mix, and they're trying to get it to mix, and they'll use electricity to do that. We do that with what we call electrochemistry. You can look it up. I'm not gonna explain everything about electrochemistry. Just want you to know that's what they could have used it for, because they did do chemistry. Then another useful use of electricity, especially in ancient times, because people got to eat. And there was no McDonald's, no Uber Eats in the past. So, of course, they had to grow their own food. And sometimes they had to grow food in very harsh climates, sometimes in the cold weather or a drought or whatever, right? So with very little water, they had to make the most of it. So stuff like electroculture is what it's called. And it's using, electricity, as you can see, to make huge crops. In other words, to make things bigger through the power of electricity. So using electricity to kind of fertilize the ground, and you got to understand that plants, they are bioelectric. Humans are bioelectric. We're all, because electricity is just electrons. For those who don't know what electricity is, it's electrons. It's not the thing that charges your phone, right? Yes, we use electricity to charge phones, but that's not what electricity is, right? Electricity is electrons. We call it electricity because we use it to do things, but it's electrons. Everything has electrons. Your body has electrons, right? Every atom has an electron, proton, neutron, right? So they will use electricity to grow food because they need to eat. Electrolysis. This is the process of using electricity to separate hydrogen and oxygen. Now, this could be used to separate other chemicals. Now, remember, electrochemistry was more about combining or causing chemical reactions between two different types of chemicals. Electrolysis is the opposite, which is you're trying to split the chemical bonds. So you're trying to separate the hydrogen from oxygen from water, right? So you can get the hydrogen gas, right? Atoms and the and the oxygen molecule, right? So oxygen, hydrogen. And they can use the hydrogen, right, as fuel, because if they're going to burn it, right, to cook food or to heat up whatever they need to heat up. And then what happens when you burn hydrogen gas is that it turns into water, because it mixes with the oxygen, right? Because you need oxygen as a catalyst, right? So the fire will eat up the oxygen, and you get the idea. So hydrogen and oxygen recombine and turns back into water, which you can use the water to drink, right? Because it's H2O. So this is one way they can filter water, is through electrolysis. There's other ways, obviously, but this is one way where you can, at the subatomic level, at the chemical level, separate water from anything else, from other chemicals, because you're separating the individual atoms, right? The individual molecules like hydrogen, oxygen, and then recombining it. So there's a lot they could do there. So look that up. And electroplating, which has to do with using electricity to combine things, to attach things. So if you want to copper plate something, you would need you need the metal that you're trying to copper plate. You need the solution, the liquid, to have copper particles in it. And then you need a copper metal, and then you run the electricity through that. And the idea is that electricity will flow through the solution, causing the copper to adhere and attach to the other metal. It's not going to go with the copper because it already is copper. It's going to repel, actually, and it's going to go towards the other metal. So same thing would be if you're trying to silver plate or gold plate. You're going to need one of the metals that you're using for the electric circuit to be gold, and then let's say gold and iron, because you're trying to gold plate iron, so you need a gold plate and iron plate. Then you need gold particles in the solution, and then run the electricity, and then the atoms, the molecules, right, particles, will start attracting itself to the iron, and then it'll start coating it, right? It'll start chemically bonding to the surface of the iron, and then that's how you make an gold-plated iron bar, or whatever you're trying to gold plate. So, and it doesn't require too much electricity to do this, just a considerable amount, at least more than 3 volts, at least, right, to do this stuff. But ancient humans was aware of lightning bolts, right, and the ability to for lightning to travel through water, so they were aware of that. So of course they would try to create stuff that is tall enough to get hit by lightning, and then redirect it down to a water source, have the electricity go through the water source, right? And then, and the more likely the water source will have some salt or some type of impurity, like it have some stuff in it, and it'll react to it, and there'll be a chemical reaction. More likely, the most common one will be the electrolysis scenario, where the hydrogen and oxygen of the water will separate, and then you'll have hydrogen gas, and they can do a lot with hydrogen gas. You can use hydrogen gas to cool things. You can use it as a way to freeze things, to make things colder, which can be very useful in the desert, right? The opposite is you can use it to produce heat in case you need heat, right? Or you just need fire, right? To burn something, for the purpose of cooking, for example. And then the byproduct of burning hydrogen gas is water. And we can use water for many things. And the fact that you can re-electrocute the water and reproduce the hydrogen again, right? Hydrogen gas, and then burn it again as fuel, and then just do it over and over again, use the water, So infinite supply. So there's definitely a lot of signs, a lot of things that make it obvious that ancient humans were well aware of electricity, well aware of, what it can do to water, and what they're able, and they were creative enough to use it in many different ways. There are some evidence of things that were electroplated in ancient Egypt, for example, and among many other ancient civilizations, of course. But just wanted to point that out for those who be asking about, like, oh, ancient humans, they didn't have electricity. Yeah, I think they didn't because they didn't have smartphones or electric or Teslas. Like, we're lucky to even have that. So it's not like it's once you have electricity, you automatically have internet and satellites and electric cars and flat screen TVs. Like, you don't automatically have that. It took a long time for us to even have it. And ironically, most of the stuff is not even that special. It's made of basic ass shit, basic materials. Most of the stuff we use is made of crystals, right? Made of silicone, made of copper, right? Zinc, gold. There's a lot of gold in your smartphone, ironically. You literally have gold inside your smartphone. You're unaware of it. You have copper, you have silicone, which is a crystal, right? You have quartz in there, which is a crystal. Right? So it's just ironic that we use a lot of this basic earth-based material and we created stuff out of it. Cool stuff, yeah. But it's still basic. You could still, in ancient times, make a smartphone, but there was no need for it. That's the only reason why it didn't exist in the past. Not in the way we think, anyway. Did they have communication devices? I'm gonna do a little more research on that. I do have some stuff that hints at they definitely had a way of talking to each other across the world, but besides using birds, right, to send messages, they had some methods. They understood frequencies. They understood radio waves. So that's for another video. But for now, I just want to point out that, yeah, electricity is not something they would not known about. It's just something they wouldn't create the world we currently live in using that. We did that because we really like electricity because it's magical. But in ancient times, they didn't care about shit like that. The average person. It was so ironic. I always see when people try to do the whole Tartaria thing, like, oh, look, they had electric scooters and electric sidewalks that move, so you don't even have to walk and all this stuff. It's like, well, yeah. As soon as we modern day people, like in the 1600s and stuff like that, started, mess around with electricity, magnets, and electric motors and stuff. Of course, we were going to make a whole bunch of stuff using electricity, using electric motors. But doesn't mean everybody cared about it. It's like, okay, it's cool, it can do cool stuff, but that's it. The average person. You know how long it took for people to even want a washing machine, want a refrigerator, want a washing machine? I saw some videos about it of like how some people in the past were some inventors created like a washing machine. It was trying to convince women to use the washing machine, but the women just rather wash clothes by hand because they're so used to it. They weren't quick to be like, oh yeah, I would love a machine that does the dishes for does the dishes for me, that does laundry for me, so I don't have to do nothing. No, they actually have no problem doing dishes or doing laundry. Right? Even when they created stuff to make it easier to do construction work, most guys were like, nah, I'm good. I'll just stick to my hammers. I'm okay using a hammer to nail. They weren't quick to use a nail gun, even though electric nail guns existed. They rather use a hammer and their natural manly strength. Just because electricity exists, or just because some people had some ideas to use it, doesn't mean just instantly the whole world will adopt that idea. It took a long time for us to adopt ideas. Just because we're so used to the technology around us, electrical technology around us, doesn't mean it was always like that in human history. That humans just inherently, like, whenever they have access to electricity, they immediately make the smartphone, the internet, electric cars, electric motors. Like, no, they would just get on the back of a horse and just go somewhere. They're not gonna waste time building an electric car or even a gas powered car. Even if they had the knowledge to create a gas engine, they'd be like, I'll go ride that horse instead. Much easier. That's the thing. Eventually, yes, people will eventually adopt it. And here's the thing: it's always the younger generation that adopts the new ideas, the new stuff. So no, a lot of old people wouldn't give a fuck about no, you know, using electricity for anything other than something simple like, oh, I'll use electricity to grow my food, and that's it. I'm good. I'm gonna sit here, look at the sun set, and eat my watermelon that I grew with electricity. And that's it. They don't need to be like, oh, I gotta go create a smartphone. I gotta create the internet. I gotta create TikTok. Like, no, they don't care about none of that. They wouldn't waste time doing that. We in modern day time waste time doing shit like that. Think about how many people waste time making memes when they could be doing something more productive. Because when bad things are happening in the world, trust me, memes mean nothing. You're gonna wish you spend a lot of your time on the internet learning how to do stuff, like how to farm, how to grow food, how to even know which plant is edible, so that way you don't accidentally eat poison ivy and die like an idiot. I'm just saying, knowledge is power. A lot of y'all lack it because y'all obsessed with electricity, like it's the like it's magical or something. Y'all sound more primitive than ancient people with your obsession and worship of electricity.